Some calendars can be mathematical, as is the Gregorian calendar. Other calendars, like the Hindu calendar, they are astronomical. In very literal terms, it means that the Hindu calendar bases itself on and describes astronomical events, whereas the Gregorian calendar has decided a certain thing. This is the length of the year, this is the length of the month, etc., etc., and it does not pay that much attention to what is actually happening in the heavens.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Walk Indian History podcast and Happy New Year.
Lovely to see you all. Namaskar. Forgive me if I don't say Happy New Year, but Happy New Gregorian Year, because for me, we are on Posh Saptami 2080 Vikram Samvat, and it's going to be 2081 Vikram Samvat only in April. And what do we mean by all that? That is what we are going to discuss in this particular episode.
Yes, that was quite a tongue twister to begin. But before we get to that, how was your break? Did you have did you have a good time? I had a really good time. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
How did you do?
so holidays are good. You have family, and actually, you have a very tight social calendar, tough social calendar. So, yes, we've been holidaying and partying hard. I'm sure you have too.
Which explains the lack of activity on the channel.
Yes.
But worry not, we are back. I'm
Yes.
back at home after 3 weeks away. It's been amazing, but I think I am super excited about the content that we have this time around. And you were also telling us, right, that you received a lot of feedback about the show in person
Yes.
from a lot of the
Yes.
listeners. So,
Yes.
so
And I think
we'll be
people
looking-
like
yeah.
a blend of history and modernity. Well, I'm the old one here, history, and he's the young one who gives you the modern
I could-
perspective.
What? I was going to say knowledge and lack of knowledge is another good blend happening here. At least on this topic.
No, that's not, actually, it's good to have different perspectives on the same issue. So you can look at it from within the system as I do, outside the system as you do, and I think that gives listeners a very good perspective.
Absolutely. Good. So I think you gave it away, but given that it is just a few days into the new year, there are a few things that I've always been very curious about, and that's kind of what we're going to cover today. I mean, we take the new year, the year 2024 or whatever year it is, the days, the months, the weeks, the calendar, we take it all for granted. It's a specific system. It's the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah.
And it's not only now, but I've always been curious, why did we decide, when was this decided? Is this necessarily the best way of doing it? I know the earth moves around in a certain amount of time and the lunar calendar, etc. But this is this is a very specific system, so I'm very curious to know about the origin of it. And then going to the little that I know about the Indian system, the other thing I'm also very interested in is, I know there's an Indian calendar. I know that, for example, if you look at Indian festivals, they follow different dates in the Gregorian calendar every year. So I've been always very curious about that as well. What is the Indian calendar based on? And going back to the year, it's 2024. So one of the things that you gave away is, what year is it according to the Indian calendar? How is it even decided? I mean, the Western calendar, the Gregorian calendar has a specific time, which is, the year, as originally called before Christ and Anno Domini, right? So linking to Jesus Christ. I'm very curious how the Indian calendar works. So I think those two are a couple of things I'm very curious to know a lot about. And then I think if we have a bit of time, I have a couple more questions, but let's start there.
Okay, so all of us now, and that's most of the world which lives within the parameters of the Gregorian calendar, at least for civil purposes, we all live in the era of Jesus Christ, in the year of our Lord. Actually, that's what Anno Domini means. In the year of our Lord, Jesus Christ, 2024. So that would make you think that, fine, this is the era of Jesus Christ. It was an event, a big event which influenced everyone. So the era starts from there. This person was born at this time and his birth marks the beginning of this era. It's actually not as simple as that, because marking of time has been necessary, absolutely necessary for humans ever since human civilization began, and Neanderthal man would also have marked time in some way. So all these are actually, those which we think are set in stone, are actually systems and ideas which are put in place for a society. The Gregorian calendar, this is the current annual calendar which we also follow. I'm sure you follow the same in Singapore. I don't know if there is some original calendar in Singapore, Utkarsh.
No,
Yeah. So
all Gregorian.
are
I think
there,
the whole world is. Go ahead.
I was asking, are there even hints of one historically? Or was the Gregorian calendar followed forever as far as you can remember in Singapore?
Well, Singapore was a bit of a unique situation because it was basically a village until it was established as a port. I think about 150, more than 150, almost 200 years ago. So, and it was established by the British Empire, right? It was established by Sir Stanford Raffles. So yeah, it's always followed the Western system.
Okay. So that is true of Singapore and perhaps, of a few other places. But old civilizations such as China, India, Egypt, even others
Yes.
have had their own ways of marking time for a very long, long time. Even in what we today know as, well, let's roughly say, the Christian parts of the world, from where this actually originated, they were parts of the older Roman Empire. So in those parts of the world, it all started with the Roman calendar, which was established by Romulus, the fabled person called
Yes.
Romulus who established Rome.
Who was
So
raised
that
by a
the-
wolf, right?
Yes.
Remus and Romulus.
Yes. So that was a very, kind of strange kind of calendar. It did not have 12 months. It had only 10 months. It was an observational lunar calendar because you could see the sun waxing and the moon waxing and waning. So this Roman calendar went on for a very long time, till in about 46 BCE, before the Common Era. Our good friend Julius Caesar decided to reform the calendar. So he was the one who introduced 12 months, the leap year, January 1st as the beginning of the year. All this was introduced by the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar went on for another 1500 years. Still in 1582, Pope Gregory the 13th, he replaced the Julian calendar with the Gregorian calendar. There was a papal bull, which was a kind of shasan or an instruction or administrative decision, which was called Inter Gravissimus. And then you had the Gregorian year. The Christian countries of the world adopted it slowly. It was not, immediate. So they adopted it slowly. Then in the 16th century, in the 17th century, in the 18th century. And why did they have to do this? Because, like I said, it was a kind of mathematical calendar. The Julian calendar just assumed that there are 365.25 days. This is not the exact calculation. It's actually 2422. So it sounds like decimal numbers, but the number of days start shifting here and there, and then you suddenly see that, this was supposed to be Easter and it's not Easter. The moon was supposed to be waxing, but it's waning. So
Yes.
calculating the date of Easter was a very important thing for Christians. So they thought, something had to be done about it. That is in 1582. Not so for the Romans, of course. That is why Pope Gregory had to fix the dates. Everything was drifting away here and there. The spring equinox of 21st March was happening on some other date. So the problem of Easter calculation had to be solved, and they did it by adopting the Gregorian year. So the Gregorian year assumed that the number of days was 365.2425. This is also not exactly correct. It's still followed, but this is not exactly correct. It's actually 2422. So all these small numbers make no difference to us, and they just seem like a lot of gobbledygook, but it makes a difference in terms of the number of days that are there in the
If you
year.
add it up over, it adds up.
Yeah, it adds up. So in 1582, there was a 4th October, and then suddenly there was a 15th October. The rest of the dates were eaten up. So that was the way the calendar was adopted. And similarly, the British decided to make it their administrative calendar in India. So they introduced it in 1753. So
So just on that point of the dates getting eaten up, so are you telling me that a date back in history before 1582 is actually 11 days
yes,
lesser back in
yes,
history than we think it is?
yes, and once we go back to before the Common Era, it becomes even worse. And I'll tell you why in just 1 minute after I tell you that in 1753, 11 days from the Indian calendar were eaten up in September. So it just turned back by 11 days. So this gives, a very peculiar idea about time.
So if I had a time machine, I wanted to go back to a certain time, I need to account for all of
You
these
need
days
to
eaten
account
up.
for all this stuff. And if your time machine wanted to go back to the years BCE, then you are in grave trouble, my friend. Because when this AD and BC was established, so this AD and BC is, it's Anno Domini that I already told you, in the year of our
Yeah.
Lord Jesus Christ, and BC is before Christ. Now,
Yeah.
this AD and BC was devised by someone called Diocletian. He did it in about the 5th century. But in the 5th century, people in that part of the world did not know zero. So there's no zero.
Uh-huh.
So there's 1 AD, and before that you have BC. There's no zero, 1 BC. So can you also, you'll also have to adjust for that, because you may say what you want, that there was
Yeah.
no zero, and you cannot understand the concept of zero, because the concept of zero, which was discovered or thought of in India a very long time ago, although it is associated with Brahmagupta in the 5th century. I hope to do another session where I will tell you where
Yeah,
the zero
which we
actually
will.
came
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So zero was there in India. There was no zero in Europe. So there is no zero. So there is no year zero in which Jesus Christ was born. There's just 1 BC and 1 AD. So you see, time is turning out to be more kind of,
Yeah.
inaccurate and more fly by night than we would ever have imagined. And we tend to think of timekeeping as a great achievement of Western civilization. Timekeeping, exact timekeeping. It's not, because the Gregorian year we follow today is still not based on the correct solar year. There is still that infinitesimal, but which adds up a lot. That difference is still there. So, and very ironically speaking, talking of the adoption of the Gregorian year everywhere, why did Diocletian start this AD and not Diocletian? I'm sorry, it was Dionysius. Please note,
Dionysius.
not Diocletian, but Dionysius. Now, why did Dionysius do this? What was his problem? His problem was that they were living in the Diocletian era. Who was Diocletian? He was a Roman emperor. And the era was named according to him, Diocletian. Now, he was a great persecutor of Christians. So, by the time Dionysius came along, most of the Roman Empire had become Christian after Constantine. So he did not want to remember that terrible man, Diocletian, who was a great persecutor of the Christians. So he said, forget it. Now everything is going to be named in terms of Jesus Christ, who is our Lord and Savior. So he devised this AD and BC system. But when was Christ born? So there is basically no time for him to be born. There is no space. Any of the scriptures of the Christian religion, they don't talk about when he was born. So there's actually no historical source about when he was born. But in 350 AD, Pope Julius I decided that this is the date he was born, 25th December, that's it. And that little bit about AD and BC, that problem still remains. It has not been sorted out today. You don't have anything which happened in year zero, nothing. Perhaps 4 years before, 4 BCE as we would call it, that was the time when Jesus Christ was born. Perhaps not. So what did they do? They appropriated certain holidays and certain dates of the already existing Roman festival calendar. One was, of course, we know that the ancient Romans also worshipped the sun. So it was actually the birthday of the unconquered sun, Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, which was appropriated as the birthday of Jesus Christ. And this was also mixed up with the Saturnalia festival of the Romans, a 7-day festival. At the end of that festival, they decided, okay, when the Romans, the ancient Romans, they celebrated the birthday of the sun god, we have now decided that Jesus Christ was born and we will celebrate his birthday. So that whole mythology and Jesus Christ and the three kings, etc., all that was made up as they went along. Of course, we know in modern times that Coca-Cola kind of invented Santa Claus, and that has also become really a part of the festivities.
Yeah.
So, what I was trying to say through these anecdotes is that it's not a very accurate system. And it remains a not very accurate system.
And I think even for leap years, there are certain times that they add 2 days as well, right?
So for leap years, when the Julian system was started, then they just said if you divide by 4, then you have that little extra bit left.
Gap. Yeah.
So you can you divide by 4 and you add another day. So then that will make up those decimals that we were talking about. But this also so actually does not. So you added 1 day to a leap year. But it actually doesn't work out very well because it's still, remember, not a correct approximation. The actual decimal approximations are different. So what the Gregorian year tried to do as a kind of another patch is that they said that for years which end in, for centuries, they have also to be divisible by 400. Just a year being divisible by 4 doesn't work. So if it is 1900, is it divisible by 400? If so, it's a leap year. Otherwise, you don't add that one. So through this kind of some, mix and match and some kind of guesses and patches, they're still trying to make it work, and we are still going along with it. But there it is, and we also follow the system, the time system of this particular year. But look at a country like Ethiopia, it doesn't. For it, the day starts at 6 in the morning and ends at 6 in the evening. That's it. It has only 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, and it has not changed. It has refused to change. So, if you go to Ethiopia, then you have to translate everything. In our modern quest for uniformity, we feel that it is best if we go from anywhere, from one point of the world to another point, everything should be the same. Now, I have nothing to say about that, about uniformity, but it does tend to kind of, quell a lot of other things in its wake, and a lot of other interesting diversities, useful diversities, perhaps better diversities tend to vanish.
No, I think you do need, for time in globally interconnected world, I do think one needs uniformity a little bit, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it is important to recognize that the Gregorian conception of classifying time is not absolute truth and the only way. It is just one standard which has gained prominence over many other standards that could potentially exist. I think that's one way of looking at it.
And that standard has gained prominence because of colonization. So the Dionysius I was talking about, he did not want to remember Diocletian, so he made Jesus Christ his, the beginning of his era.
Yeah.
Look at all of us. We have all been exploited by colonization. Yet we are carrying forward those remnants on our own shoulders. We are still remembering Jesus Christ, Christians, missionaries, colonization, they were all one package. We have absolutely internalized the same things that were used by our tyrants, by the people who exploited us. So we should all become Dionysius. Or maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
That's a whole different, but I think that's a very, what should I say, that's a whole different topic altogether, I think. But one thing I'm very curious about is, and you've alluded to this a few times, that obviously the Julian system, you said, right? Caesar system. and then the Gregorian system, they're not still perfectly scientific.
No.
Or rather, not perfectly in line with astronomy, right? It's
Yes.
mathematics, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
And you were mentioning that yeah, go ahead.
No, and if a calendar has to be a reflection of astronomy, remember, I'm going to repeat this. It should not just be numbers. If there is a number, it should correspond to something happening in the celestial sphere. So, does it happen in the celestial sphere? Or is it just a series of numbers? Numbers will unfold according to their own logic. And there's no problem in that logic. But is your numbering system referring to some specific things in the celestial sphere? And, correcting for the kind of differences which happen, because there are a lot of celestial bodies we look at. That is what doesn't happen.
So I think, so then I'm very curious, because again, like so many of the conversations, I mean, once you open that door, and I had never even thought of that door, I knew about approximations, etc. But I never thought of, and now that you mentioned it, it makes so much sense, that the movement of celestial bodies is basically a map. It's a constantly progressing thing, and correlating where you are in time linked to the movement of celestial bodies is actually the logical way to do it.
Yeah.
Because the other things kind of which are persisting, right? I mean, of course, they also have their lifetimes. So yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you wanted to share more on the Gregorian calendar. I think you were mentioning a little bit about how it was adopted globally. Maybe you can do that, and then I'm very curious to get into the traditional Indian or Vedic or whatever the calendar might be that you're referring to.
So, I've already mentioned how the Gregorian calendar came to be adopted across the world. It is a product of empire. It's a product of the Roman Empire. It's a product of the British Empire. So, the early Roman calendar was superseded by, of course, Julius Caesar was not a Christian, but it was superseded, that Julian calendar was superseded by Pope Gregory, and the Pope, remember, was the ruler of what was called Christendom, which means all Christian nations. And this papal bull was like a directive from the king. So it was followed by everyone who were part of the early Roman Empire, and that Roman Empire had been turned by Constantine into a Christian empire. So the Roman Empire became the Christian Empire, and the Christian calendar was started over there. When the nations of Europe went out in their colonial plunder and quest, remember, God, glory and gold. These were the three things they went for. So they went for God, glory and gold, and they spread their own ideas and their own administration forcibly. It was not as if before 1753 nobody in India knew what a calendar was. It was actually it is the oldest functioning civilization on planet Earth today. So obviously it had some way of looking at time, otherwise it couldn't have existed. If you can't look at time, if you don't understand the seasons, you're dead.
Yeah.
So therefore they imposed it on this, and the one word answer to the adoption of the Gregorian calendar is colonization and Eurocentricity and European power. So that is why we are all living in the era of Jesus Christ, whether we want to or not. Power and empire and calendar, these three are absolutely inextricably related.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think the first step is to acknowledge that this is not, so just like you acknowledge that there are other languages than the English language, which is fairly obvious, right? It doesn't take much to acknowledge that. But I think that it's a little bit tough, and it takes a little bit more of actually thinking about it to acknowledge there are other systems and other more things that we consider fundamental. And I think time and dates and calendar is one of them. So I think this is a good first step.
Yeah, and in the past, I would say perhaps 20-30 years, there was a bit of a realization, because other people started their pushback maybe 30-40-50 years ago against colonization in the political sphere. In the middle of the 20th century, there was a huge pushback. Colonization in the educational intellectual sphere, we are still in the middle of that pushback. It's barely started. But a little bit of it was started in terms of this time. So this Anno Domini, many people did not want to live in the year of our Lord Jesus Christ, because he's not everyone's Lord Jesus Christ. So they tried to do something like AD and BC was no longer Anno Domini or before Christ. It was before the Common Era. BC, as in before Christ, became before the Common Era. And CE or Common Era was to replace AD or Anno Domini. So that's kind of, putting lipstick on a pig, because it remains the same. Nothing changed. You just try to remove that very, very Christian thing called Anno Domini. And, there was a pushback from the Christian world also. A lot of the people living in these countries did not want to, they don't identify themselves so much as Christians. Many are atheists. So they don't want to live in the year of our Lord and in His grace, etc., etc. So today what we should use is BCE and CE. Otherwise, there's another system, which is called BP, before present. So you count your number of years before present. If it is 2000 BCE, then you just add 2000 to 2024 and you say 4024 BP.
Before present. Okay,
yes.
Got it.
That's the most modern system of historical dating, BP.
But it's a constantly evolving date,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
the date and time is not constant. It's a little different then.
Yes, absolutely. And this whole thing of how human-made time is, it just escapes us. So for example, look at where I live today, Switzerland, Europe. It has daylight saving time from October to March. So just one day you get up and you lose 1 hour. Why?
Yeah.
Because during the war, they decided that you should just make the day begin a little early so that sunlight will be there and we won't have to use so much energy. So we will save energy, which was at a premium during the war years. We are still living with that. For what reason?
Yeah.
For no reason. So time is totally man-made. Years, time, everything is totally man-made.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the best example of that is during the New Year. Like, I mean, I'm usually in Singapore, which is 2.5 hours ahead of India.
Yes.
So I remember I was at the airport at 10 p.m. and I was thinking, am I in 2024 or 2023? I'm not sure.
So now that you said New Year, then I just want to answer one more question before we go on to the astronomical properties of the Hindu calendar.
Yes.
So that is this whole question of New Year. So New Year, there are multiple New Years in India. And these multiple New Years are because of the way in which the astronomical calendar is understood and used in different regions. So when I speak of the astronomical calendar, I'll try to give a very simple explanation, Utkarsh, because it's a very complicated astronomical discussion. So I don't know, whenever we do that podcast on astronomy, we'll have to see, how much of complexity can we introduce. But just remember that there are many Happy New Years in India. And those Happy New Years are slightly different. There's a difference of 2 weeks. The basic underlying principle is the same, except for Gujarat. The basic underlying principle is the same. That is the first day of Chaitra Mas. That is our New Year. That is the Hindu New Year. But the first day of Chaitra Mas, it comes on different timelines for different ways of calculation. So that's why there's a 2-week difference between say there is Yugadi and there is Baisakhi and Gudi Padwa and Bihu. So there will be a 2-week difference, and that 2-week difference is due to a particular observational standpoint. So now perhaps we should move to considering the Hindu calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
So the Hindu calendar is a lunar cum solar calendar. Now let's look at it this way. From the beginning of time, we were on the earth and we looked at the skies and we saw that things were changing. There was day where there was light, there was night where there was darkness. Even at night, there was something in the celestial sphere which used to give off certain kind of illumination. So that is why it is called Jyotish. The study of all this is called Jyotish in Hindu terminology, in Vedic terminology. What is Jyotish? It is a study of light, Jyoti.
Light, yes. Yeah.
So that is what is at the base of all this. So we have, what do we have to consider? We have to consider the moon's revolution around the earth's revolution around the sun. Then we have to consider all the grahas. We have to consider the sun. We have to consider the different constellations which we can see in the celestial sphere. Now this is...
Can I ask a related pertinent question, I think. So, Jyotish, just to date it, but definitely in the BCE time period.
Oh,
earlier?
Jyotish is as old as the Rig Veda, because it's one of the Angas of the Rig Veda. So that is, as we said, we will not get into dating the Rig Veda, but it is many thousands
in
of
the
years.
BCE. Yeah.
In the absolutely, okay, let me then give you some more detail, which perhaps I was not planning to.
The reason I was bringing it up is Jyotish is based on what you were mentioning, right? It's the movement of moon around the earth and earth around the sun,
and the other activity in the celestial
and
sphere.
the others, But who is it? Copernicus or Galileo? Who's credited by discovering the earth, where the world moves around the earth moves around the sun?
Galileo. Very late in the 15th century. Ridiculous.
15th century, yes.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
So why has this not been corrected? Okay, I know why, but it needs to be corrected. Let's not get there.
Yes. Yeah. You know why. And the day we start discussing math, and the day we start discussing vaccinations, or we start discussing textiles and textile weaving.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of colonial loot, not only in terms of actual, material things, but a lot of information and knowledge.
Property.
Yeah, intellectual property.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of loot.
Yeah.
So,
anyways, you were just mentioning. I didn't want to distract you on that. I just wanted to point that out.
And the BCE question, the Jyotish question, is that Jyotish is of two types or two eras or two kinds in the Indian tradition. One is called Siddhantik Jyotish and the other is pre-Siddhantik. The pre-Siddhantik is what I have once explained as Vedang. It is one of the Angas of the Ved, this Jyotish. And Siddhantik is anything which happens after Brahmagupta, after the two Bhaskars, after Varamihir. There is a certain stage in which the study of astronomy changes. So pre-Siddhantik is the Vedang, and post-Siddhantik, it's because Surya Siddhant was a very, very popular text, and Brahmagupta, of whom we shall hear a lot, was a very, very important intellectual person in this tradition. So, and there were also a lot of differences in the Siddhantik tradition and in the pre-Siddhantik tradition. In the Siddhantik tradition, there was more of a focus on the Rashis, the 12 Rashis, the zodiac signs, the constellations. This was there in pre-Siddhantik astronomy, but the focus was different. So you can see that the root of Indian astronomy goes back to the Rig Veda and one of its Angas. You will hear, just open any arbitrary, Wikipedia article, they will tell you, yes, there's some astronomy in India, but it comes from Babylon. Or it comes from X place, or Y place, or Z place. And they will say that there was nothing original in it. Now, this is another very complicated question, and we'll need to go into details to understand why this is not so.
Yeah.
But I'll just give a very small example. For instance, there is the star called Agastya. This is a star which is very important in South Indian calculations. Now, this Agastya star does not exist in any of the other astronomical systems, only in the Indian. And it is extremely important for a lot of Hindu dates and for a lot of Hindu calculations. One day perhaps we may do something on astronomy, then we will consider this in greater detail. But I will come back to the fact that our idea of the passing of time was based on the moon's revolution around the earth's revolution around the sun, the different rashis and nakshatras. So what is a nakshatra? When you look at the sky, you just divide it into specific regions. These specific regions are called nakshatras. They have specific stars in them. Then there is also the concept of Rashi. The nakshatras are 27. They are all divided into 4. then this whole thing is divided into 12, and those are the rashis, or you can understand them very, very vaguely and roughly as zodiac signs. But it's not actually
Okay.
absolutely true. But it's just to aid understanding, because these are very complex things. So again, there is a very specific way of calculating the time period of these things, of calculating the exact position of each of these grahas. Now, again, I'll just give you a very short understanding of graha. Graha, Navagraha, is not the 9 planets. Because graha means grihit. It refers to gravitational pull. That which is, caught in the toils of the earth. So Earth.
But I thought Isaac Newton discovered gravity in.
Well. well.
No, I mean.
Yes,
yeah.
he was
Anyway,
sitting. He was sitting under that apple tree.
The apple
remember?
fell down, right?
Yeah, the apple
Yeah,
fell on his head.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It probably fell on our heads also. So we forgot a lot of what happened before that.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, it was sitting there to be spoken.
So the grahas are something that is grihit, caught. So Earth is not a graha, because we are talking about that which is grihit, which is in the gravitational influence of the Earth. So the sun is counted as a graha, but Earth is not a graha. So Navagraha is one of the one of the positions, positions of the Navagraha are very important. But this is not the same as the 9 planets, so don't confuse it. Now, the fact that this revolution around the sun does not take a time which is exact but which is in decimal numbers is a problem. It's a problem for everyone, whether an arithmetical calendar or an astronomical calendar. Everyone has to deal with this, because those little bits are left and then they add up to a lot. So there is the concept of leap year, mathematical concept of leap year in the Julian and Gregorian calendar. But in the Indian system, it's an exact calculation of astronomical phenomena. It's called Adhik Mas. Every 2.5 years, an extra month is added to the year. It is not a calendar adjustment. It is a cosmic reality of certain positions of the nakshatra, of the rashi, of the sun, moon and Jupiter. Okay, so this is the Adhik Mas.
So in this Indian calendar, every third year has 13 months.
I must then tell you that the month is also lunisolar.
Yeah,
So
month is again a concept I'm just taking.
Yeah, so waxing moon and waning moon, 14 days of waxing moon and 14 days of waning moon. This is called Shukla Paksh, that is when it becomes brighter, and Krishna Paksh, when it becomes darker. At the end of Krishna Paksh comes Amavasya, and then at the end of Shukla Paksh you will have Purnima. So now remember
Can
this
I ask
also.
one, as you explain, I just want to ask a question, because I'll listen to this and I'm sure I'll remember. But what is a good resource for someone, probably it could be English speaking or Hindi speaking or any other Indian language, to really learn this? Because we know the Gregorian calendar like the back of our hands.
So I think that there is a YouTube channel called the Sanskrit channel.
Okay.
It explains all this in very, very simple terms.
Okay.
So
That's
you
wonderful.
can take a look at all those. I think the rest of it, would be very complicated. There are people who do a lot of research on this, pre-Siddhantic astronomy, post-Siddhantic astronomy, and there are lectures and talks, but they are very complex.
Yeah.
They're extremely complex.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you can go there and learn all this, or you can read books on Indian astronomy. There are also books on Indian astronomy written in
Any
English.
particular book to call out?
I will put it in the.
Maybe we'll put it in the description of the video.
Yeah,
or
we'll put it
something.
in the
Okay,
description.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so there are 12 months in the Hindu year. They have different names which are based on the nakshatra and the rashi, on the sun side or the moon side. Why? Because remember, the sun, the earth is moving around the sun.
Sun moves in the sky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sun moves in the sky, moon moves in the sky. They go across different parts of the celestial sphere. This celestial sphere is divided into nakshatra and rashi. So it is according to the nakshatra and the rashi that the months are actually named. So some people use the solar system of naming, some use the lunar system of naming, but a very standard solar system of naming is, the first one is Chaitra. This happens in April. So then you have Baishakh, then you have Jesht, Ashad, Shravan, Bhadrapad, Ashwin, Kartik, Agrahayan, Posh, Magh and Phalgun. Right now we are in Posh. Today is Posh.
Okay.
We are in Posh Vikram Samvat. So Posh is, roughly you can say that Posh and Magh are winter, and Chaitra and Baishakh are spring, and Shravan and Bhadrapad are perhaps the reasons that this whole calendar came up. What is Shravan and Bhadrapad? Is monsoon. It is a time when the rains come down. The rains come down in India, agriculture, and it's essential for agricultural activities, for the production of food. So since time immemorial, to know when was the first day of Shravan and what was how long would Shravan and Bhadrapad last, that was very, very important. And it is quite possible that this was the reason for most kinds of calendrical and time observations to start, apart from the obvious one of observing the day and night and the change of seasons, of course. So according to us, according to the Hindu calendar, today we are in Posh Saptami Shukla Paksh 2080. Shukla Paksh means that it is still the bright sun.
Huh? Where does 2080 come from? What is the
yes. I will tell you that. But let me just emphasize the fact that the Hindu Panchang, the Hindu calendar, is a very, very astronomically calculated and scientific one. So now I have just said something which you will again not have understood. What is Panchang? So we'll also have to understand what Panchang is before we can go on to considering more of the calendar. So the the Panchang means that there are 5 elements. What are these 5 elements? These 5 elements all depend on the different positions of the things that I have been talking to you about. What are these things? Rashi, Nakshatra, Tithi, Yog, Karan. I've already explained what Rashi is, what Nakshatra is. Tithi is something which corresponds to what we would think of in Western terms as the day. Okay. And Yog and Karan are the positions of the different grahas and events in the celestial sphere. So you see that for each day, we have this comprehensive view of the entire celestial sphere and its movements. That is why it is called Panchang. It has 5 elements, wherein all these things are taken into account. So that is the Hindu Panchang, and it is according to that the months are named. I gave you the 12 names of the months. Then the month has 14 days of Shukla and 14 days of Krishna. The 7 days which are also there in Hindu calculation, they are Siddhantic astronomy. Pre-Siddhantic astronomy, pre-Siddhantic time period, we had these fortnights.
Okay.
The 14-day to 14-day.
Because that corresponds to the lunar cycle very well, right?
Yes. But post-Siddhantic, then it became a 7-day week. That we'll have to consider some other time. So we now know the day according to the Panchang, and we know that it is according to the astronomical events in the celestial sphere as seen from the earth, as calculated from the movements mainly of the sun and the moon, but also certain other important planets. And interestingly, there is a concept of years based on the cycle of Jupiter, which also I will tell you about, and how it is connected to or also connected and organized along with the solar year. So that is a kind of solar Jupiter year 60-year cycle. So I was telling you about the day, the week, the 2 fortnights, that makes a month. Then I told you about the
Yeah.
12 months. And then
Yeah.
we come to the whole year. And remember, the
Yeah.
year is based on astronomical calculation. So the solar year is called Varsha. And this Jupiter year is called Samvatsar. So I'll tell you about the Samvatsar later. If we keep on
Yeah.
with this whole year business, so we have 1 year. But 1 year is not the... We have to go beyond it, because time obviously keeps passing. So how will we think of how many years are there? What is the antiquity of the Hindu calendar? When did it start? So brace yourself, Utkarsh. And I mean, the ways in which Indians have thought of time, they are one unit of time can be divided into something which is 10 to the power minus 6 small, which is called Parmanu, and 10 to the power 22, which is called Yuga. And this is not the end of it.
That is a crazy range.
Yes.
That's a crazy range.
That's a crazy range.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So how are these mathematical figures, how are they explained and how are they understood? So we have the concept of Kalp. So what is a Kalp? You know that the creator of this world is called Brahma. So a Kalp is 1 day in the life of Brahma. And this is 4.32 billion years. It is divided into...
Sorry, 4.32 billion.
B, Bombay, billion years.
No, I got it, billion. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's a very large number.
Okay, wait for it.
B, what's the age of the earth? Isn't that very similar to that
So
number?
yes, there are many things which are very close. So first I'll tell you the entire system.
Okay, please go ahead, but I just got
Yeah.
this. Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So a kalp is 4.32 billion years. It is divided into 14 manvantars. Each manvantar has one Manu. That Manu is the Prajapati, is the one who actually does the actual creation and running of the earth. And there are 14 different ones. We are living in...
Sorry, Manu is I mean, I know Manu and like the guy, I mean, similar to, again, I'm giving a
No,
Eurocentric Christian
don't do that, because
Okay,
it's not
tell
similar
me
at
about
all.
Manu. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah,
You
don't
please
say
tell me.
anything because it's not similar. So we are
Okay.
we are living in the Manvantar of Vaivasvat Manu, and there are 14 Manus. There within the time period of these 14 Manus, there are 71 Yuga cycles. So what is a Yuga? So each Yuga. So how many yugas are there? There are 4 yugas. That is the Satyug or Krityug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug and Kali Yug. Each of these adds up into that 43 lakh and 20,000 years. This is one yug, remember. Okay. 43 lakh 20,000 years. But the yugas are not of the same time period. Satyug is very long because it's ideal, people are wonderful, the earth is wonderful. All this wonderfulness keeps getting decreased. So it is 17.28 lakh years Satyug, then 12.96, then 8.64 and then 4.32. So
There's a ratio going on there.
Yeah, there's a ratio. And that ratio is the same always. So you have 43 lakh 20,000 years of one yug. So how do we fit it into the whole idea? Because for us it is Srishti, Sthiti, Lay. Creation, then creation keeps on, it lives on, it multiplies, and then it's finished. That is Lay. It dissolves into Paramatma. So how do we understand that? So 100 years of Brahma's life is the time of Srishti, Sthiti, Lay. This is the time of 100 years of Brahma. This is one cycle.
Okay.
Within this...
But one day of Brahma is 4.3 billion.
Yes.
What? Okay, go ahead. I'm going to just listen.
Yeah,
Okay.
just listen. So 100 years of Brahma's life So that is 100 years of Brahma's life. Just think of multiplying 4.32 billion years as a day
Yes.
into 100 years of Brahma's life. That 100 years of Brahma's life is called a Mahakalp. Then
Okay.
at the end of that Mahakalp is Pralay. So we are all dead. Right now, would you like to know where we are so that you know how far we are from Pralay?
Yes, please. Good to know.
Yeah.
I have to worry about it tomorrow or day after. I would love to know.
So right now we are in the Shweta Varaha Kalp, and that is day 1 of the 51st year of Brahma's age in this Kalp. Now this Kalp is also, there is a cycle of these Kalps also. In the Matsya Puran it is 30, in the Vayu Puran it is 33. So that many times this cycle goes on. Don't forget that for Hindus time is cyclical. So it's all going like a cycle. Srishti, Sthiti, Lay. 100 years of Brahma's life is Pralay. And after that it starts again and you go into the next Kalp. Then there is a cycle of Kalps and that cycle of Kalps will also end. So you see it is regenerative. There is no beginning of time and no end of time. In the Christian understanding, there is a beginning and end of time. Beginning of time is when the earth is created. End is when there is doomsday, when everyone will rise up and it will be the day of judgment. We don't have any such thing. It is a cycle. And there are very nice, interesting names for all these different kalpas also. Neel, Lohit, Vamdev. So everything is very clearly named. Everything is very clearly calculated. So now you see this is the antiquity of the calendar. It's a bit outside our, normal thinking range. Point being made here is Hindus, Vedic Hindus thought of the smallest bit, that Parmanu, or a little bigger than that was Truti. And they thought of this 10 to the power 22. And this whole system ran very logically. So according to this system then, where are we? So we have to be somewhere. When did we are in Kali Yuga right now? You must be aware of that. That we are in Kali Yuga right now. Okay.
Yes.
So we are in Kali Yuga. When did Kali Yuga start? Kali Yuga started on a very, very specific date. That was 3102 of what we will call in the Gregorian system 3102 BCE. Now how do we know this? So this the start of Kali Yuga is found not only in our texts and scriptures everywhere, but also in many inscriptions, because kings like to date themselves, that I am the king, this is my regnal year, etc., etc. And they used to date themselves from the start of Kali Yuga, which today we can calculate as 3102 BCE. So we are now...
Can I just ask a question? And I know that this will get tangential and maybe we need to do an entire separate podcast on the Hindu concept of time, which I have just so many questions. I'm deliberately not going there because...
Yes. It has to be done.
But just to ask a very small tangential question. So you said that the length of the yuga was 43,200 years, right? Something like that.
Of Kali Yuga.
The total length of the 4 yugas together was 43,000 years or something, right?
That was 43 lakh 20,000. 43 lakh 20,000.
43 lakh
20,000. So
4.3 million years.
4 yugas. 43 lakh 20,000 is 4 yugas.
Okay, so that's 4
lakh 32,000 is
million.
Kali Yuga. 4 lakh 32,000 is Kali Yuga.
Okay,
And
so
4.32 billion years is Brahma's day.
So wait, so then according to this, not to get into a panel discussion, so are we saying, because archaeological is a whole different thing, so are we saying that, because 43 lakhs is 4.3 billion, correct? I'm getting it right. Million is 10 lakhs. So are we saying Satyu, and we are, and how long is Kali Yuga? Did you say?
Kali Yuga is 432,000 years.
432,000. So
of which 5,024 have passed.
got it. So that puts us in roughly in the total yug of 4.3 million. That puts us in at 3.9 million since this yug began, roughly 3.95 million ish, whatever, right? So what are we saying that civilization began 3.95 million?
No.
Okay.
We are Kalyug is only 3102 plus 2024.
But
This
Satyug
Kalyug.
is linked to people as well, right?
Yes. You're right. Not only that, you're right about calculating it that way, that 3.9 million. But there's another question here, Utkarsh. The question is, or rather the statement is, that after all these cycles, the world is destroyed and it starts again. So let's not think of civilization as only in this yug cycle. There are many yug cycles. And you've raised an important question. This is speculative, but I would like to talk about this just for 2 minutes.
Okay.
This whole idea of every year, every 100 years of Brahma's life or a kalp ending with pralay or floods and fire, all the elements of what we have on earth, it can be related in some way to the ice ages. And there is one person who has actually done that. We could have a discussion on his understanding of astronomy, where he has dated Indian civilization to beyond many ice ages with its destruction and creation anew. And this is Bal Gangadhar Tilak. One other person who has done this kind of discussion in a very different way, of course, is Carl Sagan. He has called the Hindus the people with the maximum broadest conception of time. So this is a very fascinating thing which we can
But the numbers
discuss.
are just too large, right?
Yeah.
Even if you call
And
it
something I wanted to,
billions.
something which I wanted to also talk to you about. All these numbers are related to figures that we get from the celestial sphere. They are either the distance from the earth to the sun, the earth to the moon, or the diameter of the sun or the diameter of the earth. There are many different figures. All these figures are related to astronomical variables which are there in the celestial sphere.
So what you're saying is, now this to me is a smoking gun. What you're telling me is that we have accurate measurements of the size of celestial bodies from a system that, regardless of arguing how old it is, but we are definitely sure it is at least
BCE.
4,000, 5,000 years
Yes.
old. Yeah, 4,000, 5,000
And
years old.
Utkarsh, again,
And how do you do that without equipment?
Yes. So, observation. And there are generations of people who did just observations. These observations are there in pre-Siddhantic astronomical Jyotish literature. And you will be happy to know that there are also young scholars, current scholars who are working on these.
Yeah.
And they have been finding very good approximations to the variables which have been understood by our modern instruments today.
Yeah, so for me that is a very, very, like, you can do conjecture about so many different things. We think it is, we're waiting for proof. For me,
And I'll tell you
If a
another very
system-
cute little
yeah.
interesting thing. So you know that Hindus
Yeah.
believe in birth and rebirth and death, and there are different yonis
Yes.
in which you are born and reborn. So there is a figure for that.
Okay.
How many yonis there are. That means basically how many kinds of living beings there are. And do you know that it corresponds very closely to the actual kind of number of different living beings that we have on earth. It is some 84 lakh something. That also corresponds. So the Hindus were a very observing kind of people. They observed everything, and talking of astronomy, they also observed comets.
But my question is simple. I can look at a table, but I'll never see the bacteria, no matter how much I observe it.
So that is understood through their effects. Through their impact. Effects, their impact. After all, when Sushrut and Charak, they talk to you about different vyadhis, or you can't see those vyadhis inside the body, can you? And some part of surgery was there and they did cut up a few things, but a lot of it was seen through the effect. If this happens, then that is at the back of it and it's inside your body. The same goes for observations of nature and of the celestial sphere. But exact ways of doing this, then I will also have to read up on Jyotish. and then I will be able to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we don't have to get into that. I think for me, just the fact that celestial bodies have been measured to what has been confirmed with modern instruments such a long time ago just points to a much more advanced system, whatever, I'm guessing equipment at the end of the day, whatever, however that equipment may be.
Yeah.
That's very, I mean, if it's there, I mean, if you have, it's like two separate, it's like triangulating information, right?
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
have this, you know the age of it. This thing that is that old says this thing about, which has been confirmed separately to scientific experiments.
So,
Yeah, anyways,
so
this can be a
Utkarsh,
whole
you said
different thing.
triangulating on the basis of Pythagoras theorem, and it is that great Pythagoras who has given us this triangulation. But of course, thousands of years before that, we had it in the Surya Sutras.
Of
It's
course.
a different matter
Yes,
that modern Western science and math does not recognize anything other than Christian, Western science
Yeah.
and math. But it did exist. You know,
Yeah.
people lived on this earth before Eurocentrism and before colonialism. And they lived pretty prosperous lives
Yeah.
too. And did a lot of stuff. But, you know, we are trapped. We are completely trapped in this Eurocentrism and this Christian idea of math and science. Anybody who's just interested, you know, read the works of C.K. Raju for math. It's freely available on the internet. Just read a few of his introductory works and you will see how much of Christianity is there in the math that you have studied, Utkarsh.
Okay. Good. I had interrupted. I don't know where I had interrupted you, but perhaps you remember.
Yeah, so okay, I was telling you of the concept of the historical antiquity that is hinted at when we look
Yeah.
at the concept of Kalpa, Yuga, Manvantar, and all these other ways, Samvatsar, Varsh, all these ways of counting time. So now, you know, this is kind of a flow. It flows on, time flows on regardless of whether you and I are there or we are not there. But we need some time to understand sections of it. Just a flow will not help us all that much, so we need a starting point. Normally, across cultures, these starting points have been things which are very great. Something wonderful has happened or something bad has happened, you know, because a lot of things in pre-Siddhantic Jyotish is dated with a pralay, that is a flood. That's not anything great. But something is needed, some event is needed, good or bad. So
Yeah.
these normal events become, you know, when there is a very, very powerful king, a powerful empire, or a powerful spiritual person. So Jesus Christ is that spiritual person. But in India, we have this Kali Yuga system, which I told you, this is the oldest calendrical system. It is mentioned by all kings. Other than that, more recent ones are before 1753, before the British came, in India we use the Vikram Samvat and the Shak Samvat. So the Vikram Samvat is based on the empire and the kingdom and the accession to the throne of Vikram Aditya of Ujjain. Raja Vikramaditya of Ujjain. In Gregorian terms, that is about 57 BC, which is why I said 2080, because our new year has not yet come. It's going to come in April. Then it will become 2081. It is still 2080 for us. The other one was the Shak Samvat. This was based on the accession to the throne of Shalivahan Shak, this is India's national calendar. This is said to have happened in 78 BCE according to the Gregorian calendar. In India, the Hijri or Islamic calendar is also used. This is the time when Prophet Muhammad had to run away from Makkah to Medina. That's when the Hijri calendar starts. This Hijri calendar has no connection with anything in India, the crop, seasons, etc. So this had to be modified into the Fasli calendar to add crop, seasons, agriculture, because in a desert you don't have any crop, seasons, agriculture. So the Hijri calendar is used for Islamic festivals, etc. And the Fasli calendar is not used at all. The Vikram Samvat calendar and the Shak Samvat calendar, you know, the Shak Samvat calendar is a kind of it's a useless non-entity. The government adopted it once India became independent as India's national calendar. Nobody uses it. The government itself uses Gregorian, but some little place in government documents you will find Shak Samvat. The one which is actually
Hilarious.
used by most people is Vikram Samvat. So, for example, when my daughter got married, then the date was Vikram Samvat. So, for all religious and social purposes, now North India and a lot of South India also, we use Vikram Samvat. That is not recognized by the government of India. It recognizes Shak Samvat. For what reason? I do not understand. But that Shak Samvat is neither here nor there. Nobody uses it now. It's very interesting to
Okay.
know who was Vikramaditya of Ujjain. You know, Utkarsh, Ujjain is also the place where time is supposed to start. That is the place of Mahakal, something which is bigger than time. So it is a good question that perhaps that should be the prime meridian. And this Mahakal,
Why? So why is Ujjain that place?
why is Ujjain that place is something to do with its situation, its latitude, longitude, its place, and there are certain astronomical stories around it, which kind of tell you the sum and substance of those stories is that Lord Shiv established time at this place. That's why Lord Shiv is called Mahakal. He's beyond time. So that is, one way of looking at it. And Ujjain has been a center of astronomical studies both in the pre-Siddhantic and post-Siddhantic periods. There's no doubt about that. Vikram is also Vikramaditya of Ujjain. He's associated with Ujjain. Is also the person from whom we count the Vikram Samvat. Now Vikram, modern historiographers say that this is imagination. Shalivahan, Vikram, all these are figments of the imagination, myth, useless. So ignore it. There's no Vikram Samvat. You stick to Gregorian New Year. Now in 1943, it was the 2000th year of Vikram. So the Sindhyas of Gwalior, they had a huge symposium on Vikram. They published the proceedings of this huge symposium, called it the Vikram Smriti. In that Vikram Smriti, all the evidences, stories, etc. about Vikram have been collected in one place. So archaeological evidence of this Vikramaditya is thin on the ground. There are only few inscriptions, but textually it is very, very, very rich. So it's like the Rig Vedic people. Archaeological, we don't know where it is, but lots of text. So is the archaeological bit the Harappan civilization? We don't know. So historiographers in India, the modern one, said so therefore this person doesn't exist. There's just some stories. However, there are many other things about which there are only stories and there is no archaeological remains. The Vedic Aryans for one. Then Bimbisar and Ajatashatru, who were very close to Gautam Buddha. They are two kings for whom there is no archaeological evidence. But we accept their existence very much so. So it was a choice to not accept the existence of Vikram and Vikramaditya. So Vikramaditya has been one of the biggest names of any king across India. Any king who had arrived would take the title of Vikramaditya. So Chandragupta II of the Gupta dynasty, one of the most powerful kings in India. What names did he take? Chandragupta. Where did Chandragupta come from? It came from the Mauryans, the first Chandragupta.
Yeah.
And where did Vikramaditya come from? Vikramaditya came from this Vikramaditya of Ujjain.
Of Ujjain. Okay.
So Vikramaditya is someone who lives on in the memory and in the history of this subcontinent. What I want to say here today as a historian is that I want more research to be done on who was Vikramaditya. Around that period was the time when there was the Shaka dynasty was there in most of North India. So some of the Shaka kings have been identified both with Shalivahan, not the Shaka, Satvahana. Delete Shaka, it's Satvahana. So this Shalivahan Shak has been identified with the Satvahanas because the timing matches. Vikramaditya could also have been one of the Satvahana kings because the timing matches. Interestingly, there is the oldest story cluster that we have, which is called the Badkaha, which was written 600 to 800 years before Christ. This has been lost now, but we have many, many rewritings of it in different languages, Marathi, in Sanskrit, in also Tamil, the Perunkottai, the Vasudev Hindi, Brihat Katha Manjari. All these exist. Now, these are the stories of a king who captured the imagination of the entire country. In those books, these kings are named differently, and these kings can hark back to certain other of those Mahajanpads I had mentioned. But they have, in these are stories of Vikramaditya. In these are stories of how Ujjain was established and how Lord Shiva and Devi Parvati, what was their input in it. So it kind of comes together with Mahakal. Now here a very strict historian can tell me that please do not talk of these myths and stories and try to pass them off as evidence. Now in India, we are the oldest living civilization. We have to have a different way of looking at evidence from history. We have to look at things which are more than just physical evidence, simply because the time that has passed is very, very long. So some historians in India are trying to, recast the category of evidence to include folk memory, to include what is written in our text. It is a very difficult and difficult thing. It has to be done very carefully, but some beginnings are being made, and it is my wish, perhaps I will be the one to do it, to think more about Vikramaditya, the person who established the Samvat in which we are living. So that is the Vikram Samvat. Okay. So then, we should say Happy New Year on actually 9th April. That is Chaitra 1 Vikram Samvat 2081. And I will say Happy New Year to you on that day. So you see again,
I think we'll do a podcast on that day, perhaps.
Yeah. So as I always say, it's we have lost a lot of our own moorings, but not completely. Something is there, we can recover it. Because we still use the Panchang. The Panchang is used daily in every Hindu household to look at the day, to know what is the social and religious significance, etc. We use it every day. So there are lots of things we can still build on.
Yeah. No, good. I mean, everything that you've said, I think, has given, again, so much food for thought. I think there's a whole tangent on time. There is a whole tangent on understanding the map. Honestly, the approach that you mentioned of looking at time as more of a map, right? This is where you are, this is where the solar system is.
Yes.
Right? So there's a whole bit, I think we definitely need to deep
Utkarsh, whenever we do a puja at home, if you listen very carefully to what is being said in the beginning, they locate you in time and space. They will tell you which samvat you are in. They will tell you the geographical place you're in. So we have a very strong understanding and a strong connect to our physical surroundings and our celestial surroundings in Hindu civilization. Very, very strong.
So I think what we will do is we will do a dedicated podcast on both of those topics. And for today, I hope it's been a very good primer, more than a primer actually, a proper introduction into understanding that the Gregorian calendar is not the only way to look at time. So again, thanks again for joining us. Please let us know your questions. Please let us know any points of view. And we will see you again very shortly. Take care.
Namaste.